Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. And we have a very exciting show in store for you this morning, as every morning. We're going to be talking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, so make sure you get your questions in. He'll be in the 7 o'clock hour. We're going to start the program. There's a ton of viewer comments that we'll begin the show with. And we're going to talk, of course, about the Signal app. We're going to talk about some other issues as well. Try to get to as much as we possibly can before the sheriff arrives in the Hesselson studio. Let's begin here, shall we? Again, these are from viewers after the program or right towards the end of the program. I didn't have an opportunity to read them. First off, I usually don't really like quartets, but the Mark Twain quartet was really good with their harmonies. Yes, that was the staff meeting quartet that we played yesterday. They've got their concert coming up this weekend. It's a Mark Twain chorus with the Crystal Chords. And on tomorrow's program, I believe it is, we have one more special song that Metaphor sent us that we'll play as well. So thank you for that comment from a viewer. Different viewer. All day long, the media and Democrats referred to Elon Musk as President Musk or Billionaire Musk. Yeah, I see it's very common for them to say the world's richest man, Elon Musk. But never brought up the violence they caused with their rhetoric. Not once did they condemn the violence being perpetrated by their comrades against Musk. What a bunch of hypocrites. Well, we're going to be talking about that violence. We're going to be talking about the destruction that some of this rhetoric has caused. So yes, thank you. Comment from a different viewer. Oh no, this is from the same viewer. FYI, if you like football, the UFL kicks off this Friday. It sure does. My favorite team. It's going to be right here on Fox. I went with the Houston Roughnecks back in the early days of the XFL right before COVID. So Houston Roughnecks are going to take on the St. Louis Battlehawks. And then on Saturday, well, that's at 8 p.m. on Friday, right here on Fox. And then on Saturday, San Antonio takes on Arlington, and that again at Fox at 4 p.m. San Antonio Brahmas and the Arlington Renegades. So thank you for that, viewer. Anytime that you can pass along a message that lets me promote our lineup here on Fox, I appreciate it. Okay. Comment from a different viewer coming in late last night. Violence is nothing new to the left. In 1969, future President Barack Obama, his mentor, Bill Ayers, co-founded the Weather Underground. That's very true, a leftist terrorist group. This revolutionary Marxist organization helped instigate the Days of Rage riots in Chicago and carried out bombings at the U.S. Capitol, the Pentagon, the California Attorney General's office, and a New York police station. Despite their violent history, several members of the group later secured prestigious academic positions. Yes, and that points to the larger problem that we've had with academia, I should say, that we've talked about with the protests on college campuses and the radicalization being encouraged by the faculty. That's a very good point, and it's one that's been made on this program before, but definitely back in the radio days and during Obama's administration, that many of them received very prestigious academic positions. Continuing with this comment, though, leftist political violence did not end in the 60s. The Miami riots of 1980, the Los Angeles riots of 1992, the Cincinnati riots of 2001, and the Ferguson riots of 2014 show that it remains a recurring feature of American politics. The pattern is predictable. The media frames a justifying narrative, progressive activists coordinate the unrest, and political pressure ensures few, if any, perpetrators face consequences. The American left has long treated violence as a legitimate tool of persuasion and expects to use it without accountability. Thank you, viewer. Now, this is clearly going to be from a different viewer, as you will see in a moment, but Rick writes in. Rick says, well, Trump and his circus are off to a good start this week. Trump has apparently told his DOJ that he thinks is his personal law firm not to get involved in the immigrant flight disaster. If you challenge Donald, you'll be out of a job. All the Republicans in Washington know that. Scared. They're all scared of Donald instead of standing up for what's right. Then Waltz invites Goldberg to the war plan group chat on a non-secure messaging app, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. Then Trump calls him a sleazebag, meaning Goldberg, on national TV. I think we all know who the sleazebag is. The real hero here is Goldberg for not releasing what these guys were broadcasting, therefore potentially saving American lives. You know, we are all supposed to put our faith in our leadership in D.C. to do the right thing and not make stupid, rookie, incompetent mistakes like this. There are many people like Waltz, Vance, and Hegseth, to name a few, who aren't even remotely close to being qualified for their roles in government. Trump fills his cabinet with people that will always do what he says, and that is more important than being able to effectively do your job. I'm sure Langworthy will have a few words of wisdom for us on Friday. I'm assuming, I'm not sure here. You may be confused on that point unless there's some event that Langworthy will be attending. If you're referring to my program, we have former Congressman Joe Sempolinski on Friday. So not Langworthy on Friday. Former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, if that's what you're referencing. If not, I apologize. I read his newsletter and how much he praises Trump. Pathetic. Thanks for hearing me. What is going on in Washington is like a three-ring circus. Thanks, Rick. Thank you for writing in, Rick. I appreciate you watching the program. And then early this morning, really early this morning. Got the same kind of sleeping habits as me. Good morning, Frank. Like I said yesterday, Vance is going to Greenland. He is joining his wife. I know. Thank you for calling me out on that. The original reports had just said Usha Vance was going. And then I saw in my email yesterday a statement that Vance was going to attend as well. JD, that is. So, yes, I stand corrected. Thank you very much. Also, there's another comment on that. And what did I do with it? There it is, Mark. And that was Mark, by the way. Mark also writes, Texas Congresswoman is under fire for calling Governor Abbott. Well, not exactly what you said there, Mark, but close. Called him Governor Hot Wheels. Now, if you're not familiar with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, he does use a wheelchair. He had a tree fall on him, break his spine. So Jasmine Crockett, who is becoming quickly because of her rhetoric, a star in the Democrat Party, saying very questionable things. And when I say questionable, not just insults like this, but also the loaded language she's using, almost signaling a call to violence. We in these hot, blank Texas streets, honey, she said. You all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down here. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot blank mess, honey. Now, Republican Governor Greg Abbott, 67 years old, has used a wheelchair since 1984 when he was paralyzed after an oak tree fell on him while he was out on a run. So Jasmine Crockett, representative from Texas, quickly becoming a rising star in the Democrat Party, calling him Governor Hot Wheels. I think this is a prime example of kind of the double standard in media. You could only imagine if this were the other way around, if it were a Republican calling a Democrat in a wheelchair Hot Wheels. While her cruel remark was met with laughter and applause from the audience, it drew criticism from many, especially since the 43-year-old was speaking for an organization that bills itself as existing to, quote, develop a more affirming, inclusive, and equitable community. So she's speaking in front of a group whose goal is to develop a more affirming, inclusive, and equitable community, and yet the crowd laughed and applauded when she cruelly called Greg Abbott Hot Wheels, Governor Hot Wheels. Right. CNN contributor Scott Jennings went to X and said, today, the unquestioned leader of the Democrat Party, Representative Jasmine Crockett, mocks Abbott with an insult, Governor Hot Wheels. Riley Gaines said, Democrats, please keep giving Jasmine Crockett the microphone. We'll never lose an election again. But some said they had little sympathy for this outrage because of, this is how the media is presenting it, of comments Trump has made in the past. But Crockett later defended her words, claiming she was referring to Abbott's policy of busing migrants from Texas to sanctuary cities across the country. Quote, I wasn't thinking about the governor's condition. I was thinking about the planes, trains, and automobiles he used to transfer migrants into communities led by black mayors, deliberately stoking tensions and a fear among the most vulnerable. At no point did I mention or allude to his condition. I'm even more appalled that the very people who unequivocally support Trump, a man known for racially insensitive nicknames and mocking those with disabilities, are now outraged. Now, Governor Abbott did comment on this. He was on Hannity's program saying it's another day and another disaster by the Democrats. The reality is they have no vision, no policy. They have nothing to sell but hate. And Americans are not buying it. I definitely do not buy her excuse after the fact, suggesting it's because of his busing policies. He also said that these remarks will only leave the party, quote, in the dust, using a little play on words there, in future elections. If she thinks that, I mean, listen, to certain crowds, unfortunately, that plays apparently. And that does show you, to his point, that Governor Abbott, the level of hate that is out there. We're seeing it, unfortunately, rise to violence and destruction, as with the fire bombings of Tesla. But this raises the question. She is very popular in the Democrat Party because of this kind of heated rhetoric, the rhetoric that has led to violence in the streets. But according to a piece out this morning or late yesterday that was linked to by Drudge, data is suggesting, polls are suggesting that really the most popular, I want to hear your opinion on this, the most popular politician in America could very well be Bernie Sanders. He gets the number one spot, they say, with 46% of adults saying they view him favorably and 39% unfavorably. That's pretty good, but if you're trying to think about a candidate who can win back some of the voters Democrats lost from 2020 to 2024, it is notable that Sanders is also net favorable with young people by nearly 20 points, lower income voters, moderates, independents, Hispanics, black voters, and men. And he's only 2 points underwater with white voters. One theory for Sanders' relative crossover appeal is his emphasis on criticism of the system, which they go on to suggest is what led to Trump's rise as well. I've always said it would be interesting what would have happened if the Democratic Party didn't have the fix-in, where he would have had a chance to beat Hillary Clinton. And if he were to beat Hillary Clinton, if you got rid of the superdelegates, and like I said, the fix was in. There's no way Hillary wasn't getting the nomination. But if it was a free and fair primary and Biden were to win, it would have been interesting to see how that general election would have played out. A couple other things, since it just ties in so perfectly, a couple other things about Democrats here. But again, if you're just joining us, it was a comment from a viewer referencing that Jasmine Crockett calling Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is in a wheelchair, Governor Hot Wheels. But we got to take our first break. Already running a little late. We got a lot to cover this morning before Sheriff Allard comes in. So get your questions in for him. Get your comments coming in. And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Comment from a viewer, the thing from Texas, I'm assuming you mean I guess it would be like a forum with Jasmine Crockett, also promoted violence against Musk. That seems to be a common theme, unfortunately. Thank you very much. Fear and anger. California town halls are not going well for Democrats either. Their constituents suggesting they're not doing enough to fight Musk, to fight the Trump administration. I want to know why in the world the Democratic Party hasn't fought yet, asked one resident. And the Democrats were unambiguously being put on blast, whatever that means. One resident saying it seems like Democrats were quietly sitting and doing nothing. and that they should feel the same anxiety, fear, and anger that they do. I wish that Democrats would match my anger and my fear. So the town hall is not going well for Democrats either. A Democrat Senate hopeful, Mallory McMorrow, this is out of Michigan, did an interview with Politico. And she talked about some of the problems that the Democrats are facing, saying instead of snubbing our nose at those people, which is the perception that a lot of people have of Democrats, is that we're elitists and we're academic. And we look down on the people who don't watch traditional Hollywood movies or engage in mainstream media. That's the perception, and that's why people are turning against Democrats. Now, she is, according to Politico, a rising Democratic star. Boy, there's a lot of rising Democratic stars. Of course, yesterday we talked a lot about AOC. Now we're talking about Jasmine Crockett, and in this case, Mallory McMorrow. Now, she also suggested that it's the idea of mixing the Joe Rogan interview, like Harris did, that ends up costing the Democrats. Democrats have to start being unafraid to go everywhere and meeting people where they are. The Joe Rogan experience, former Vice President Kamala Harris famously missed an opportunity to go on Rogan's show just before the election. Yeah, but it goes back to that new social media outlet that it seems like Democrats are using in full force, which is Blue. I think it's called Blue Sky. They want to be in a bubble. They want to be with like-minded people. It's why, Stephen Colbert's show was popular, because you can tune in, hear a very corny, kind of trite joke about Trump, and, something you've heard a million times, but the whole crowd laughs like seals. That's what they're looking for. They're kind of their worldview to be that they can have their whole worldview confirmed to them that they are right and the little people, the flyover states, are wrong. Okay, I know we're moving quick. This was, I think, a very big story yesterday, but as is the case in the Trump era, sometimes big stories get glanced over for other big stories and the 10 breaking news stories a day. But Donald Trump signed a sweeping executive action to overhaul elections in the United States. One, and they're going to present this in the media as a negative, but I think many people have been demanding this for years, including requiring documented proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections and demanding that all ballots be received by Election Day. The order says the U.S. has failed to, quote, enforce basic and necessary election protections and calls on states to work with federal agencies to share voter lists and prosecute election crimes. It threatens to pull federal funding from states where election officials don't comply, this according to the AP. Now, again, they're trying to scare you with just the headline, Trump signs order seeking to overhaul U.S. elections. But is it shocking to you that a president would call for requiring proof of citizenship to vote? That should be controversial. The move, which is likely to face swift challenges because states have broad authority to set their own election rules, is consistent with Trump's long history of railing against election processes. Well, the issue here is, just like Columbia dealt with, Columbia University, now bear with me how I'm connecting the two, do they want to lose their funding? Do the states want to lose their funding on this? Trump telling reporters, perhaps some people think I shouldn't be complaining because we won in a landslide, but we're going to straighten out our elections. The order will mandate voters to show proof of citizenship, as I mentioned, to state or local officials before they go to the voting booth, and the officials to record the details of the citizenship document, like date of expiration on the form. The executive order will also instruct the Election Assistance Commission to cut state funding if they don't comply with taking measures to secure elections, and will instruct the Department of Justice to crack down on election-related crimes. Now, it is already illegal for non-citizens to vote in U.S. federal elections, but Republicans have long pushed to have more checkpoints to ensure secure elections. So that is an update, one that you may have missed in all the kerfuffle regarding Pete Hegseth, Mike Waltz. We're going to talk about that in a moment. We do have a couple updates on Columbia if you want to talk about that. I know we've talked about this extensively. Now the Columbia student protester Yunzio Chung, according to a judge, cannot be detained by the feds. Manhattan Federal Court Judge Naomi Reese Buchwald issued a temporary restraining order blocking immigration authorities from detaining 21-year-old Columbia junior Yunzio Chung. Quote, I don't think there is any evidence in the record that she would be a danger to the community. The notion of putting this 21-year-old, who nothing in the record suggests is a danger, into ICE detention is not a particularly appealing result. The feds have not claimed, for instance, that Chung had illegally possessed weapons or communicated with a foreign terrorist group, Buchwald noted. So that is an update from yesterday's program. Couple quick things about Columbia, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. We're going to try to get through as much as we possibly can because, as I said, we have Sheriff Jim Allard coming in the next hour, and there is a lot to cover. Yesterday was one of those typical Trump news days where there is just story after story. Of course, we're not putting off at all the National Security Advisor Mike Waltz taking full responsibility for the signal leak. We're going to show you the perspectives on that. We're going to talk about it when after we update you on Columbia, which will be very quickly. So stay with us. A lot of comments coming in, a lot of waves. Keep them coming in. Glad that you're part of the program this morning. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking roof cam. Is that snow? It is. The Frankly Speaking roof cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Was not expecting that, though it is chilly. All right, we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Corner. A couple comments from viewers. Mark writes in, anyone that is not a U.S. citizen should not be able to vote. This is not their country. They're not a U.S. citizen. And that rule is already illegal for them to vote. But what Trump and Republicans have been fighting for is more checkpoints, as that one piece said, to just ensure that they're not illegal votes cast. Comment from a different viewer. Where are the civil rights and nonviolent activist leaders showing up on the Elon Musk rioting issue? That's a great question. I know they're supposed to be, and I'm not doing this on purpose. I just don't know the exact date. I've heard different dates, that there's a kind of a nationwide protest against Musk at Tesla dealerships, and we'll see where that heads. Speaking of rioting, Columbia University, according to the New York Times, the American Association of University Professors and the American Federation of Teachers asked a Manhattan federal court to restore the funding and argued that the cuts were unconstitutional, that Columbia University deserves, no, it's a right under the Constitution, that they get $400 million from you, the taxpayer, apparently is the argument. The Trump administration's actions, quote, have created instability and a deep chilling effect on college campuses across the country, which kind of the point, that it's sad that it takes this. Remember, this is faculty involved too, but that it takes cuts in funding to force these universities to actually protect their Jewish students from threats, intimidation, and violence, to crack down on anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American protests. So maybe that's part of the point that they may be missing with this lawsuit. The president of the American Association of University Professors said the Trump administration's threats and coercion at Columbia are part of a clear authoritarian playbook meant to crush academic freedom and critical research in American higher education. Now, we know that there was a protest at Columbia in regards to the mask ban, which was part of the deals that Columbia made, that they gave to Trump for this funding. So what did they do? They protested by having a mask protest, a masked protest. Well, the powerful chair of the House Education Committee, Tim Walberg, believes that Columbia is double dealing and sending mixed messages to their students. And this is specifically in regard to the promised mask crackdown. after the school's leaders privately assured faculty there was no ban in place. So, hey, we're just telling Trump that we're going to do these things. At the end of the day, we don't care as long as we get our $400 million paycheck from the taxpayers. Tim Walberg said Columbia University's apparent double dealing only hurts Jewish students and faculty. That is unacceptable. The Trump administration was clear that strong, decisive actions must be taken by the university to address the out-of-control anti-Semitism festering on Columbia's campus. Columbia's interim president, Katrina Armstrong, downplayed a slew of Trump-ordered policy changes during a tense meeting with faculty over the weekend, according to the Wall Street Journal. Armstrong assured staffers there was no mask ban in place. Now, keep in mind, staffers, faculty. So it's the quote-unquote grown-ups in the room that are fighting to ensure these anti-Semitic protests continue, that the threats and harm perpetrated on Jewish students continues. It followed a highly publicized statement from the Ivy League university capitulating on sweeping lists of reform pitched by the Trump administration in the aims of reining in anti-Semitism on campus. In a statement later Tuesday, Armstrong said she regretted any confusion about a mask ban and insisted the policy changes, quote, are real. Yes, because again, she was found out. And that means, again, their funding could be in jeopardy. I regret any confusion and inconsistent statements and want to make sure our position is clear as we go forward. Let there be no confusion. I commit to seeing these changes implemented with the full support of Columbia's senior leadership team and the Board of Trustees. Any suggestion that these measures are illusionary or lack my personal support is unequivocally false. These changes are real and they are right for Columbia. That seems like someone got their hand stuck in the cookie jar and now wants to walk it back, thinking that she perhaps duped Trump and his administration. But what the New York Post editorial board is suggesting that Columbia proves it was lying all along about fighting this Jew hate. Columbia University is lying big time and lying clumsily at that. The school interim president, Katrina Armstrong, privately told faculty that Columbia had not, in fact, banned masks, even after it promised the White House that it would ban them. And that all boils down to the money, of course. Yeah, Armstrong turned around Tuesday to insist Columbia's promises to ban masks and make other changes are real. Dozens of mass protesters, keep this in mind, freely flooded the campus on Monday. On Tuesday, students wore masks to class, thumbing their covered-up noses at efforts to fight anti-Semitism. Yet, if you think about it, by wearing masks, they unmasked Armstrong's lies. Armstrong's trying to have it both ways on multiple issues. Talking to the faculty, she downplayed the school's other promises to Team Trump. Notably, Columbia told the White House it will name a senior vice provost to oversee its radical Middle East Studies department to ensure the educational offerings are comprehensive and balanced. Yet she and her minions then reassured faculty the move won't impact how the departments operate, the Wall Street Journal reported, which means it won't address their infamous anti-Israel slant. Do they think it's that easy to pull the wool over Team Trump's eyes? Yeah, the answer to the New York Post is yes. They believe, they've been in academia their whole life in this bubble, they believe they're much more intelligent than Trump, his team, and of course, MAGA voters. They thought they could dupe Trump's team because, again, it's this elitist mentality when they're in the academic bubble their whole life. But I'll continue. Columbia is clearly trying to defraud the feds to keep the money flowing in. Armstrong's approach, deny the truth and hire a PR firm to confuse the issue. At this point, the Trump team will be fully in their rights to cut off all federal funds if they see fit. Washington didn't stand for racism at schools in the 60s. It shouldn't pay the tab for their anti-Semitism today. And don't buy the baloney about academic freedom and free speech. Harassment, intimidation, and violence against Jews isn't free speech, nor is setting up a restricted pro-terror anti-Semitic encampment, nor taking over a building, damaging property, and scuffling with employees. As for the Middle East Studies Department, government has no obligation to fund divisive, untrue smears about Israel, America, Jews, whites, or the West. The school is free to teach that garbage on its own dime. Look, Columbia would never tolerate mask-wearing Ku Klux Klan hooligans harassing blacks, rightfully so. nor would it hire racists to teach, say, African American studies classes. It simply makes an exception when it comes to Jew haters. More than a year after Columbia became the poster campus for anti-Semitism, it remains utterly unreformed. If it won't fix itself voluntarily, it has no right to expect taxpayers' dollars. Also, there's a new demand coming from the Trump administration to colleges. Name the protesters and their nationalities. That is what is being reported by the Washington Post. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about Mike Waltz and reading some of your comments. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Yes, that is snow. And that is also the Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go through some viewer comments. To the viewer who sent in the violence is nothing new to the left, thank you for resending that, though I already read your comment at the top of the hour, playing catch up from the ones that we missed after yesterday's broadcast. But thank you for resending. And you may have missed the very top of the program, and I appreciate that. I appreciate your comment. Next up, just a lame comment. No comments are lame. Well, I shouldn't say that. As the Democrat Party spirals to its demise, I suggest that its new name should be the Chaos Party. Yeah, chaos seems to be their favorite word. And, you know, if you really look at the math, it was, I don't know where I have it here, but it was on NBC, I believe. They were going through, or I'm sorry, it was CNN. And they were going through the numbers and saying it's a wake-up call, essentially, that Trump's numbers on if this country is on the right track, through the roof. Being forced to admit that. I'll read that comment in just a moment. But Ken writes in, it never ceases to amaze me on how deeply the legacy media and Democrats have been able to ingrain TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, into the sheeple. Somehow they have convinced half the country to believe everything they say without questioning it. I would love to have an understanding of how any thinking person can look at the Biden presidency and say it was beneficial to the American people. Possible the viewer that texted you on how bad Trump is can explain how he and the other sheeple can justify their beliefs. I know how I justify my support for Trump and the Republicans. I pay attention to both sides and use the 80-20 rule. Common sense tells me that currently Republicans have the best interest of the country in mind. When that changes, I will change my allegiance. Thank you, Ken. Very nice comment. But to reference the viewer before that, so CNN, well, kind of both actually. CNN's senior data reporter, Harry Enton, was on CNN's News Central yesterday. He said, all we talk about is how unpopular Donald Trump is. So he's admitting what CNN is doing. CNN, of course, very biased in the reporting. But in reality, he's basically more popular than he was at this point in term number one, and more popular than he was when he won election back in November of 2024. What are we talking about? His net favorable rating right now comes in at -4 points. Compare that to where he was when he won in November of 2024, when he was at -7 points, or in March of 2017, when he was at -10 points. So when you compare Trump against himself, he's actually closer to the apex than he is to the bottom of that. And of course, that is so important because Donald Trump, historically speaking, has had his numbers underestimated. And that's a good point, too. A lot of people, sadly, because you see the violence like they're dealing with at Tesla, the violence and destruction, a lot of people don't want to admit that they are Trump supporters in fear of backlash, losing family, friends, loved ones, or being violently attacked. We've seen, unfortunately, numerous instances where people wearing MAGA hats have been attacked. But I'll continue with what Enton had to say. The bottom line is the percentage of Americans who say we're on the right track is through the roof. And if you were to compare it to when the president have historically been reelected, of course, Trump is not constitutionally eligible to run for reelection, but I think it sort of puts it into perspective. 42% of the country say the country is on the right track when the incumbent party is reelected. And also keep in mind, back when Kamala Harris lost and the Democrats were turned out of power, only about 27 to 28% of the country said that the country was on the right track. All right, on that point. So National Security Advisor Mike Waltz did take full responsibility for the embarrassing signal leak, full responsibility and embarrassing his terms, claiming he's unaware of how the vile, his word as well, Atlantic editor's info got sucked into this. Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible. Waltz said to Laura Ingraham yesterday. Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated. So impressed by Laura Ingraham on why Goldberg's number was on his phone to begin with, he claimed he didn't know. And I do think that's an important note. And this is not pointing the finger at Waltz specifically. That's why I know Trump had suggested it was a lower level staff member that might have put it in. The reason I say that is a huge point if that is the case, and something that needs to be looked into. That would be very reminiscent of what we saw in the first term of Trump, which was these leakers and these people set out to try to destroy Trump's administration and his agenda. And we know that Politico, not any conservative outlet, far left Politico said at the time, and I think that's what we're seeing a little bit now with some of these Doge cuts, they said that the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, need to do everything they can to gum up the works for Trump's agenda, do everything behind the scenes, admitting that there is a deep state out there or a swamp out there, saying that these unelected bureaucrats should be able to do as much as they can behind the scenes to hurt the Trump administration and to block his agenda. It's could very well be the same here. Is there a staffer that got involved that does not have Trump's agenda, best interest at heart? So maybe Laura Ingraham kind of asking, how was that number in that area whatsoever? Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name and then you have somebody else's number there? Waltz began. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like somebody else. Now, whether he did it deliberately or it happened by some other technical means is something we're trying to figure out. I don't know if he means Goldberg must be there. Waltz described the incident as embarrassing, but vowed that the White House would get to the bottom of it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but all the people out there, somehow this guy who has lied about the president, who has lied to Gold Star families, lied to their attorneys, and gone to Russia hoax, gone to just all kinds of lengths to lie and smear the president of the United States, and he's the one that somehow gets on somebody's contact and then gets sucked into this group. And I'm glad that he realizes and it is, I don't think it's much of a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's something that has to be looked into. The National Security Advisor said that he doesn't believe Goldberg, whom he described as vile, was intentionally added to the group by a rogue White House staffer. But hopefully they get to the bottom of this. I just talked to Elon on the way here. We've got the best technical minds looking at how this happened. But I can tell you from 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, meaning Goldberg. And he really is the bottom scum of journalists. All right. Now, Trump says he feels very comfortable after being briefed on the Houthi attack text scandal, and he blames lower-level Waltz staffer for the mishap. Now, Waltz trying to distance himself from that, but it would be interesting. I mean, this is something that needs to be investigated. I can only go by what I've been told, the president said. I wasn't involved in it, but I was told by, and the other people weren't involved at all, but I feel very comfortable, actually. Trump said what it was, we believe, is somebody that was on the line with permission, somebody that was with Mike Waltz, worked for Mike Waltz at a lower level, had I guessed Goldberg's number or called through the app, and somehow the guy ended up on the call. It was one of Michael's people on the phone. A staffer had Goldberg's number on there, he told the reporter. He further went on to describe the incident as the only glitch in 2 months, and it turned out to not be a serious one. Mike Waltz had learned a lesson, and he's a good man. Wow, look, oh, I'm missing all these waves. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a 4 count right there, and I see a lot of comments coming in. We got to take a short break, and then I'll read you some of the other responses coming in regards to this scandal, Houthi tech, a text scandal. When we come back, stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. While we show you the roof cam view, I'm going to read this comment. Nothing better than watching the snow fall with a cup of hot cocoa and my favorite television program. Well, I'm hoping you're referring to me. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I hope you're referring to, frankly speaking. I know you are. Thank you very much for the kind comment. Some other comments from viewers. Defund Columbia University. And why do they need government funding? The last I knew, you had to pay to go to college. Yes, that is a private institution. You're paying a lot to go there. A private university, I should say. It's amazing when you think that's one university in New York City receiving $400 million. This is one. Think of how many universities and colleges there are receiving $400 million. And then to teach this anti-Semitism, to encourage this anti-Semitism on your dime. I know. Comment from a different viewer. The Hill article titled, "Sadly, Trump is right on Ukraine," published back on March 18, 2025, argues that Donald Trump was correct in his assessment of the Ukraine conflict, specifically in attributing significant responsibility for the war's outbreak and escalation to Ukraine and the U.S. under Joe Biden, rather than solely to Russia. Thank you for pointing that out. I actually had that article someone had sent me, and I had meant to bring, I thought we brought it up on the show, but maybe I just read it and didn't have an opportunity. I ran out of time to bring it up on the show. But thank you. You can search that for yourself. It is a very good op-ed from the Hill, which you don't hear me say very often. Ken writes in, Frank, imagine for a minute how high Trump's ratings would be if the legacy media and Democrats told the truth and weren't married to bashing him 24/7. Yeah, that's one of the really amazing aspects. There's numerous ones, but amazing aspects about Trump's historic win, because it wasn't as if he was just fighting Kamala Harris for the presidency. He was fighting Hollywood, academia, and the legacy media. The legacy media, we can go through the 60-minute story. We can go through the debate where they admit that they had prepared to fact-check Trump, but not Harris. The list goes on and on. How many interviews? I mean, it was fascinating to watch J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, Tom Cotton on the Sunday shows. The first time, and perhaps last time, I watched a lot of the Sunday shows only because they had to be prepared for nasty questions, the loaded fact checks, or the condescending nature of the "you do know that," as they're talking to the now Vice President of the United States. So yeah, that's a part of the battle. And to overcome that, they talk about, free publicity, and they try to say, well, Trump had so much free publicity early on because of his time on The Apprentice and these other shows. But if you think about how much free advertisement, essentially, that Kamala Harris received from not only positive coverage of her, but negative coverage of Donald Trump. So yes, Ken, very good point. They're asking the question at, where was it? Miami Herald. Can Mike Waltz survive this scandal? So I'm posing that question to you. It seems like Trump is behind him, but will he survive this scandal? Susan Rice, the former White House advisor, was on MSNBC, of course she was, saying it's stunning. It's likely the biggest national security debacle that any professional can remember. Let me explain a bit. I don't want you to explain again why it's all. Hakeem Jeffries, who he's getting a lot of pushback from his own party for not being forceful enough against Trump. They're putting him in the same camp as Schumer. That camp is not very favored right now by the Democrat Party. So he's trying to, like Schumer's doing, trying to really talk tough now and make it look like they're really going after Trump. He calls for Pete Hegseth to be fired over this. Pete Hegseth is the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in American history. His continued presence in the top position of leadership at the Pentagon threatens the nation's security and puts our brave men and women in uniform throughout the world in danger. The so-called Secretary of Defense recklessly and casually disclosed highly sensitive war plans, including the timing of a pending attack, possible strike targets, and the weapons being used during an unclassified national security group chat that inexplicably included a reporter. His behavior shocks the conscience, risked American lives, and likely violated the law. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth should be fired immediately. So that's tough talking. Hakeem Jeffries now coming out after a lot of pushback because it is believed he is not doing enough to fight the Trump administration. So now we see from Hakeem Jeffries a strongly worded letter. Holman W. Jenkins from Wall Street Journal says a signal for Trump to calm down? Question. The intel snafu is leverage if the GOP Congress wants to start setting bounds. So, and I think I brought this up on the program yesterday, but it might have been just conversations in my private life. This is when they're going to try to push the idea that because of this error, that this was the beginning of the end of the quote-unquote honeymoon phase for the president. Now, whether or not you believe there was actually a honeymoon phase is a whole nother point, but they'll start to say, well, this is when more level-headed Republicans decided that they could push back, and that's exactly what they're calling for at the Wall Street Journal. This is when they'll start to say that Donald Trump's a lame duck, that the Republicans don't support him anymore. And sadly, there probably will be some kind of wishy-washy Republicans who will try to use this as a way to distance themselves from Trump. If I had to guess, this may be the episode that causes the administration to pull in its horns. Republicans in Congress may threaten investigations to gain leverage over a Trump team that has discomforted GOPers as well as Democrats in some of their cherished programs and prerogatives. And that will be a cause for mixed feelings. Donald Trump is a different political animal from Mitt Romney or Mr. Musk, but all three are products of the private sector. Okay. Millions of Americans are also products of the private sector. They instinctively realize that a dynamic economy produces setbacks as well as advantage. They roll with it, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea that this is when they'll start to distance themselves from Trump, I think that is perhaps an overstatement, or maybe I should say wishful thinking on their part. But that is the narrative that they are pushing. Oh, my goodness. Last break of this hour. Then we're going to wrap things up, read some of your comments. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Look at that. Snow coming down. It's still a beautiful picture, though. A lot of comments to get to as we wrap up hour number one. Let's get right to them. Regarding the reporter that told about the email, especially if he knew that it was supposed to be kept secret, out of courtesy and for his country, he should have told the sender instead of blabbing about it. He should be held accountable for exposing state secrets. Yeah, that comes as no surprise, though, because he's reported on some anonymous sources that many believe have been debunked or have been debunked. So it's no surprise that he did, to use your term, blabbed about it. Next up, at the end of the day, it's quite clear the American public is not as naive as the left would like you to believe. Agreed. And Trump and J.D. Vance made that clear on the campaign. They believed in the American people. Comment from a different viewer. On Tuesday, President Trump signed an executive order for the immediate declassification of materials related to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Crossfire Hurricane investigation. So now we get to see why the Obama administration, why the Obama administration started their illegal investigation of him, then candidate Trump. That's a very good point. That'll be interesting to find out more about that's what I mean about the Trump news cycle. You almost miss things throughout the day. I did receive that in email, and I do have it in my stack, but it should have been something I brought up at the beginning of the program. So thank you. Comment from a different viewer. Frank, it strains the imagination of why Columbia University gets $400 million from the taxpayers, since their endowment in 2024 was $14.8 billion. Yes, Ken. And that's why when they cry this kind of poverty at these college campuses, when you think of how much money they're getting from students, but also their endowments, people would be shocked if they saw the actual numbers, like in that situation, Ken. But look what and right now they're trying to play it out of both sides of their mouth to get that $400 million. Mark writes in, if Columbia gets $400 million in government funding, I wonder what Cornell gets. There's a lot of wasted money out there, and I'm glad Doge is finding it. The last report I saw was $130 billion. And we're going to read some more comments when we come back. Jack, great question. We'll get to that at the top of the hour. We have some other comments coming in too. But hour number one is in the books. Hour number two, mere moments away. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. We have so many comments coming in this morning. We've got a chatty day going on here, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for all the comments and for all the waves. Let's get right to them. Jack asks, and this is a great question. Frank, as a reporter and member of the media, what would you have done if you had inadvertently received an email like that? You know, you raise a really good point, Jack, because if this is such a threat to national security like the media is portraying it as, if this is such a threat to the country, wouldn't you as an American not want to see something happen to your country, not want to see something detrimental if it's as bad as they are portraying it? So wouldn't you say, hey, Waltz or Hegseth or one of the names you recognize, I'm on this chat. I know I should not be, but that makes me concerned that there could be others on this chat as well that should not be on there that could be a national security threat. So for the best of the country and troop safety, I am exposing myself to being on this, and I want you to, look into if there's anybody else on there, maybe use a different platform on doing that for the best of the country. But instead of getting a news story that I can use to be negative towards Trump. But that is not going to be the mindset of a, unfortunately, normal reporter. Because remember, I know I've said this a million times on the program, but in journalism school, you are essentially taught that the best thing you could ever do in your job is to bring down a sitting Republican president, i.e. Woodward and Bernstein. So that would not be their reaction, and hence it's pretty easy to say that now because you could have guessed, you could have bet as much as you wanted that if this scenario was to play out, that of course Goldberg would report on it. So that is unfortunately the mindset because they're activists and not just reporting the news. And you could even have reported in a different way if you still wanted to say I was let in on this, I let myself out and made them aware of this problem, so you could still be very negative to Trump and not do it to try to expose secrets. But that wasn't the direction you went on. I hope I did a good job on that, Jack, because that's a great question. I don't know if I had long enough time to think about it. Speaking of scandals, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Clinton give classified documents to the Chinese as he prepared to leave office? Wasn't there something about that? I don't remember. I'll be honest with you. It's been a long time, and scandal, everybody's scandal. But yes, I remember there was some questioning about missile secrets to North Korea and China. I'm not sure. I would have to do some more research on that. And don't forget that Hillary erased her hard drive, and of course, Clinton using the Oval Office as his personal playroom. Thank you very much. And final comment before we move along here. Good morning, Frank. Well, hey, good morning. Isn't it amazing how quickly that a congressional hearing can take place? It sure is. It must be too cold out to call for a Musk demonstration, right? First of all, it is amazing how quickly that hearing can take place, as we saw yesterday. But also, yeah, maybe it is too cold for a Musk demonstration. I thought it was supposed to be today, but maybe it's Saturday. You keep hearing, it's one of those things where you have too many hands in the pot, where you have too many far-left organizations wanting to be the ones that get the credit for these protests. So, one will call it and say, we're going to do it on Wednesday for this reason. And then someone else will say, no, it's Saturday. It starts to create that confusion. Eventually, the protests will peter out, most likely just due to how overwhelming the schedule is at this point. If you even look at the anti-Trump protests, I think just in the month of March alone that I know of on Market Street, hasn't there been 4? I think. Now, this is coming from New York Post editorial board. Now, keep in mind, they lean right. They're not, I would argue, in their op-ed section, they have not always been pro-Trump. But they said that Team Trump will pay a price for whistling past the Signal Group chat fiasco. It looks like Team Trump has decided to try to whistle right past the Operation Overshare fiasco and may well pull it off, but not cost-free. It says, well, and they go through what happened. We already know what happened. Never mind the desperate efforts of social media warriors to pretend they're fake meaning the post that Goldberg made, or the even more sad seven-dimensional chess fans who argue the leak was somehow deliberate. The White House and Waltz especially handed the left a loaded bazooka. Now, of all the time, but back to that point that he just said, that the people that believe that Trump is playing 3D chess argue that the leak was deliberate. It's not the 3D chess Trump people. Actually, there's a piece at CNN that I would argue makes it look as if they're perhaps trying to suggest it as well. The politics of the Yemen chat scandal is obscuring key foreign policy shifts. So kind of a distraction. Look at this one hand while the other hand is doing something else. But continuing. Now, of all times, as the administration faces major fights on everything from the border to campus Jew hate to the economy. We get it. Trump went through too many national security advisors in his first term. He still has the team he wants, and the shakeup would bring its own cost right now. But you can only play the diminish, deny, and delay game so many times before it becomes your new brand. Look, Trump was elected in good part because Americans were sick to death of the last administration's endless cavalcade of lame, easily disproved lies. Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. The border is secure. Inflation is transitory. The U.S. exit from Afghanistan was a huge success. Yes, we get that stepping up to your own failures is hard, but it's just got that much harder for Americans to trust the administration on national security issues going forward. At the very least, we pray the president is privately knocking hard on every head involved in this mess and warning the heads will roll if there's anything like a next time. The American people need to know that Trump is still fighting for them, not lying to them. That's from the New York Post. As I said, Stephen Collinson at CNN says that Trump's foreign policy heavy hitters are left embarrassed, but he's saying the scandal is distracting from some of the things that were in those texts, but also distracting from the foreign policy in general. He also suggests that the administration really despises Europe. I don't know if that is an accurate term to use. So, moving along from that. Oops. Tie it up there. Again, well, where do we want to go from here? New York issues. I have so many comments to get to. And we have the sheriff coming in just a little bit. So if you have any questions for the sheriff, please send them in. Okay, I do want to mention this. Let's go to a New York State issue, and I don't want to forget. I'll try to highlight this tomorrow as well. Senator Tom O'Mara and Assemblyman Chris Friend and Assemblyman Phil Palmisano reminded area residents that New York State Electric and Gas, NYSEG, has scheduled a, quote, community connection public forum tomorrow at the Big Flats American Legion. According to NYSEG, these events are aimed at giving customers an opportunity to meet directly with NYSEG representatives to address billing concerns and learn more about available resources to help manage energy costs. The company said its plan to hold additional community connections events throughout the region. O'Mara, Friend, and Palmisano have requested NYSEG to hold as many of these public meetings as possible. Now, NYSEG's event on Thursday at the Big Flats American Legion, that's 45 Olcott Road, will run from 4 till 7 p.m. Customers can meet with NYSEG representatives on a first-come, first-served basis. Now, I've got to say, that's not a lot of time. I have a feeling this will be very crowded. The local lawmakers welcomed NYSEG's outreach effort, noting that their offices have been inundated with constituent complaints over skyrocketing utility bills over the past several months. O'Mara, get this, and I know he mentioned it on the program when he was in, was it last week or the week before, but Senator O'Mara said that his office has heard from over 300 constituents in the past 2 months alone. In a joint statement, O'Mara, Friend, and Palmisano said skyrocketing utility costs have been the number one constituent complaint that our offices have been fielding throughout this new year, and rightly so. Some of these billing increases have been outrageous and inexplicable. We have been working with NYSEG as well as with state officials at the State Public Service Commission and other state agencies to try to get answers and assistance. Unfortunately, we haven't yet received the answers or solutions we need. It's critically important for NYSEG to conduct this direct outreach with ratepayers, and we've requested NYSEG to do more of these meetings across the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes region. Hopefully, more customers can begin to get the answers they need and deserve. So again, tomorrow at the Big Flats American Legion from 4 to 7 p.m., the Community Connection with NYSEG. All right, let's take a short break. We'll read some of your comments. Prepare for Sheriff Allard, who'll be joining us here in just a little bit. Oh, by the way, you know how we always say that if California does something, New York will do the same thing? as soon as they possibly can. Remember when we had the California Attorney General saying delete all your customer data on 23andMe if you took that DNA test? Well, now Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, is recommending 23andMe customers contact the company to delete their data. So we're only about a week behind there. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Yep, that is snow that you're seeing on the Frankly Speaking roof cam. Man, there's a lot on that car that's been sitting there this morning. Thank you to Boss Security and Horseheads for bringing us the roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Let's go through some quick comments before the sheriff comes in. Morning. All right, good morning. I got a question. Why don't they put a gag order on the guy that got the email or the text? He's already said he might tell what else he got in his text. If it's so secret, then he needs to shut his mouth. Yeah, that's a very good point. If it is about national security, like the media is claiming, then they do indeed, they should be respectful of that. He should have said, as I mentioned, that, hey, I shouldn't be in here. You better check to see if there are other people, perhaps enemies, that are in here, and not do it this way. And you could even still report on it that you were accidentally invited, I guess, if you felt the need to. But continuing. Jack said, thanks, Frank. That was perfect. Oh, in reference to what I would do if I was in that situation? Well, thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. Ken writes in, according to Google, Cornell University got $386 million from taxpayers in 2023 with an endowment of $10.7 billion. Wow, thank you, Ken. Appreciate all that information. Fred writes in, good morning, Frank. Sad to see the snowflakes on the roof cam. I thought that was going to go somewhere else about the protesters. But yes, I appreciate that. With the speed of the news cycle coming out of Washington, the issue of a text conversation is already yesterday's news. The conversation happened back on March 15th. It was just an issue because of yesterday's Intel Committee meeting, giving Democrats a platform to attack from. Trump is not entirely staffed up yet. He is about to shift out of first gear and really roll through the embedded, non-elected bureaucracy. Prayers are being answered. Thank you, Fred. And finally, thanks for reminding me that I have a beef against NYSEG. I have not received my bill from them for this month. Therefore, they will bill me double for next month. Historically, this is the third time in the past 3 years that they have done this. I have no idea why. I get no answers when I inquire about it. Well, there you go. Go to the meeting. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back. Sheriff Allard in the studio. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, a snowy Marcus Street. And in the studio, Sheriff Allard. Good morning.
Good morning, Frank. It's a beautiful day in Steuben County.
Well, it's snowing. I can't agree with you
still
this time.
gorgeous.
I can't agree with you this time.
It's still beautiful.
No, it is. How are the roads? They're fine, right?
They're fine, yeah.
Okay. We have a question first off, and then we're going to get to a couple issues. But Mark writes in, Sheriff, how far ahead is the boating course booked?
Typically, there's room the succeeding month.
Okay.
So a lot of times, as soon as it goes out, it gets booked. But if you put your name on the waiting list with with Terry Moore, my secretary,
right,
she'll make sure you get into the next one.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. All right. You guys have been doing really kind of I think a unique thing, and it's in regard to Women's History Month, because we'll get into some other issues, but I wanted you to talk about that so we didn't run out of time, of course.
We tend to do
we
that.
We always run out of time.
So this year for Women's History Month, we're highlighting all of our female employees. And, excuse me, and every day we've been putting out a little bio of a female employee, whether it's a correction officer or a deputy sheriff or someone that works in our administrative office.
Great idea.
And with their picture and why they do what they do, what makes this job special to them.
What a good idea.
It's been really neat, and we've got a lot of good feedback on it.
Yeah. Are they all excited to be up there? Because your Facebook page is very active.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And a few were a little nervous, you know. Yeah. What are you doing? I don't want that. Yeah. But overall, once a few of them did it, the rest kind of got on board, and we're to the point where I think this coming week we're probably going to have to double up a few.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to get everybody in.
Oh, that's great. That's a great way. So we'll start on that note. Then we're going to go to corrections officers. So since the last time we talked, a lot has happened. Yeah. What do you think, before we talk about what you're doing specifically, what did you think about Hochul having to backtrack on this?
Well, she had to.
Yeah, it was such bad PR.
Well, not only that, but the ruling was so against every labor law out there. And you know,
great point.
Every year we spend a tremendous amount of time and resources making sure that we have our annual training in workplace harassment anti-harassment, and basically she broke every rule
Yeah.
that we have to abide by. Can you imagine if Corning Incorporated or Siemens or World Kitchen
Right.
said, if you leave our employ, you can't work anywhere where we have a company ever again?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They try to do that in media a lot. They'll try to get a young reporter and say you can't work in media.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't hold up in New York. That's New York's laws.
It is.
The non-compete laws, essentially.
and,
But also, doesn't that point to a larger picture that she doesn't understand that just like with the mandatory shifts of like 24 hours,
Right.
the residents of New York are saying, wait a minute.
Yeah.
How is this fair to anybody that's working in corrections?
Especially upstate, you can't find somebody upstate that doesn't know a state CO.
Oh, of course.
And when you hear the horror stories of not only the working conditions, but the way in which they're treated, the way in which they're treated as guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
On any time they have to do anything in regards to an interaction with an inmate, it's that part of it in and of itself. That part's bad.
Yes.
But then when you couple it with the 24-hour shifts, and I talked to one state CO who had worked, I think 13 in a row. He had a day off that he had scheduled months ahead of time.
Sure.
And he told him, hey, I'm not going to be in on that 14th day. No, you have to be in.
Wow.
I've already paid money. I'm not going to be in. And
they deserve a break, if nothing else.
So he got fined $1,000.
Wow.
He was locked out, fined $1,000 in order to come back in. And
That is amazing.
to me, it's just the
If
treatment
any-
of these folks.
If any normal business did this, the Department of Labor would be here in a heartbeat.
Well, the AG's office would be here in a heartbeat.
Well, that's true too. Yes.
Yeah.
That is true. Though she seems to be busy with other stuff a lot of time.
She's busy a lot of time, yeah.
So how does this work? Because I know you spoke out about it. Chemung County actually went and sued.
Yes.
Because Governor Hochul was saying it's not just you can't work at state corrections anymore. You can't work for county or local government.
Yeah, you can't be a custodian in a local government.
Yeah. And then I know we've been a
You
broken.
made me angry.
Yeah, because you made me, and you had the audacity to tell us about safety issues in our prison.
How dare you?
I know. How could you do this? But we talked on this program so many times. We're like almost feels like a job fair on the air because you're always looking for corrections officers.
are.
It comes up every single interview. So what does this mean for you?
Well, for us, as soon as this ban is lifted, which allegedly April 9th, the emergency ban is lifted, which then takes out her, the governor's order.
edict. Yeah.
Yes, her executive order. We have backgrounds done on 12
Oh wow.
already, and we have 2 more ready to go.
So
we're
you're hitting
doing
the ground
backgrounds.
running. That's great.
Yeah, well, we haven't had full staff since COVID.
Yeah, right.
In the jail, and because of that, we've lost revenue with in housing and federal inmates. It's cost the county significant money. For the first time, we're going to be full staff.
That's wonderful.
And I'm excited about it, and we're getting people that are trained and know their job and bring a level of professionalism. And I had to laugh. I saw one of the governor's statements that, you counties you hire, you should be careful.
Yeah, they're not trustworthy.
These are bad people. And I'm like, no, these are people that stood up and said, no more.
Yeah, got
We're
pushed
not
to the
gonna
limits.
We're not going to do illegal stuff and be treated poorly anymore. That's my kind of people.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly who you.
I'm all about hiring those folks.
So have you found that they're kind of almost like free agents now? they're
Well,
being headhunted?
We make jokes, but unfortunately, they haven't been paid in
that's true, too.
close to 2 months now.
Yeah.
So
And they don't have health insurance.
they don't have health insurance. They're not being paid. Almost all of them have families
Yeah.
and children. And so I feel bad for them because they went to the state expecting to be able to do a career. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty good paying career.
Right.
And retire at 25 years. And then the rug's pulled out from underneath them because they wouldn't put up with being abused.
Yeah, and in such a vindictive, and it was so nice to see, Assembly Palmisano, Tom O'Mara, Chris Friend, everybody speak out, and they all use such great words like vindictive to say, because that's what it came off as. But that's what
100%.
If you look at Governor Hochul, she's fighting hard against corrections officers. And she's fighting hard to make sure that the people of New York get that tax that they deserve on congestion pricing. Isn't it weird what she picks to fight for?
Well, and like you say, the whole insurance thing.
Yeah.
We'll take it away.
Well, that too.
We'll take it away from you, but we'll give it to you. You that have been a public servant for 20 years, we're going to take yours away, and we're going to give it over here to anybody that wants it.
Oh, and by the way,
But you.
if you were fired at the federal level, we want you.
Yeah, we'll give you a warm welcome.
Yeah, she's just not. She doesn't have it. I mean, Cuomo, for better or for worse, when Lise Cuomo was in there would have been some kind of decisive action. But even with her backtracking on this, it just makes it. She comes off looking weak. I mean, in such a, I don't know, April 9th is the day then. So that's when everything can begin.
That's allegedly the day, unless she magically extends
Changes again.
But yeah, the Department of Homeland Security, New York State Department of Homeland Security, has said that the emergency order will be over.
That's great.
April 9th, which means April 10th, we can begin hiring and let these folks get back and finish their careers.
Rightfully so. And Steuben County, at the end, reaps the benefits of this horrible decision.
We do. And I feel so bad for the folks because, like you say, their starting pay at the state level is higher than our top pay.
Well, sure.
For a CO.
Right.
So that's a big ouch for those folks, but at least they're going to be working, and they're going to have good benefits for their families, and they'll be able to provide. But, yeah, what a smack in the face.
Yeah, and unnecessary, right from beginning to end. The state, and that's why, again, and not to keep belaboring this point, but the PR on it is so bad because even people, like you said, everybody knows a corrections officer, but one of the things about a corrections officer, they're behind the prison walls. We don't see what they do for us every day.
Right.
So when you start to hear about all these hours that they're working, the days that they're working, and then the assaults.
And that's what they're saying is the HALT Act is so dangerous.
Yeah.
We need to change it.
Yeah.
And, we at the Sheriff's Association have been making this point since it came in to deaf ears. And we're still making the point. But and people don't understand, they talk about solitary confinement. It doesn't happen in New York State.
No.
It never has. There's every county jail doesn't have a pit.
I know, that's what everybody
pictures. It's not like from Les Mis.
Yeah, right.
That's not what's going on. And, everything is every rule they've done is based on some horrible memory from Rikers Island. Well, that's one place.
Right.
Fix that place.
Yeah. Don't take it out on everybody.
Correct.
Yeah. But that goes into, now this is how I get on tangents on this program, but into bail reform.
Yeah.
I was reading an article yesterday because obviously the budget process is going on, and it said there seems to be no appetite in Albany to make any reforms on bail. So it's a
yeah,
in Albany maybe.
Yeah.
But everywhere
the rest
else
of the state there is.
Yeah.
Well, and I had to, you've heard me complain that, especially in domestic violence situations, the lack of ability to hold someone after an assault in a domestic incident and create a plan for that victim to be able to find a way, or survivor, however you want to say it, find a way and make a plan to be safe is taken away.
Yeah.
Because we know they're going to get arraigned and released. And I saw yesterday that there was a big thing in Albany about domestic violence and we need this and we need that. We need the ability to make sure that these abusers are held for at least 48 hours so that the person who is being abused can make other arrangements and have a plan. And I've been waiting for our advocates to step forward and say, this needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And it's taken them how many years now?
I know, and I've said it a million times, but the victims that don't need to be victims or repeat victims. I mean, it's not just, that one person got attacked, so that's one and done. A lot of times this is repeat after repeat.
Yes.
So you tie these two things in together. HALT, which is tying the hands of the corrections officers and coddling the criminals.
Yep.
And then you've got bail reform doing the same thing for our police officers.
Well, and it makes sure that the folks that are locked up are the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Because they've committed 5 felonies to get in there instead of just one. And
that's
so
a great point. Yeah.
You're dealing with, and that's what I talk about with our correction officers. It used to be we would have a large population of outside workers and we could do services for the community. We don't now because none of them classify to be able to work outside.
Wow. Do you think in the budget, I don't know how close you followed it because it's how this is such a mess. April 1st is the deadline. Phil Palmisano predicting they're not going to make it.
No.
They never do, right? Well, they did it a couple times. But do you see anything like the involuntary commitment or the mask ban, which are two kind of law enforcement areas? Do you see anything coming from that, or do you think it's just show?
A lot of it is still in committee, and it depends on what she decides to put into her budget at the last minute. I have heard a few things. We get weekly updates from our association.
I'm sure.
They monitor what they hear, but again, you never know what's going to make it till the final one's in.
Right.
Because the governor will put stuff in the budget, and then the ruling class will say, no.
No. Carl Hasty, he already signaled that he doesn't care about involuntary commitment because he said, well, the devil's in the details, basically saying, we're not going to.
Yeah, we're not going to do that in the budget.
Because it's the progressives in Albany, they're in charge, and Kathy Hochul proves it time and time again, unfortunately.
Right. And a lot of times I've noticed in the last couple of budgets, it's not been smooth.
No.
There's a lot of divisiveness within their own party.
Well, I guess the mask ban just surprised me only because she brought it up once, was silent about it for months, and now just out of nowhere she does this sometimes. So that's probably why I'm nervous around budget time to find out what's going to be in there.
You're nervous.
Yeah, I know. I can imagine. All right, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back. That's the Frankly Speaking roof cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads with the snow falling. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and in that studio we have Sheriff Allard. All right, couple quick comments from viewers. First off, I heard the mask ban will cost $10 million to implement. Probably. Yeah. It's it's like the cell phone ban in schools. $13.5 million. Can't you just tell the kids they can't use them? Put them in a closet?
Right. Put them in their locker.
And then they put $13.5 million on it, and the New York City says not enough.
Well, and they're buying those little mini Faraday bags to put them in. Half those kids are just going to put fake phones in there.
Exactly, and have their great point. Don't give them any ideas.
Yeah, I don't think they need ideas from me.
No, that's right. All right, comment from a different viewer. All right, buckle up. Have Sheriff Allard fill us unknowing viewers in on the controversy he is going through with the county. I would ask the viewer which controversy. I don't like the word controversy.
And this is only a half-hour show.
Yeah, I know. So.
If it's the leader article, Mr. Vanetten has decided to appeal the decision by the Supreme Court Justice and is forcing the county to pay for it.
Okay.
He likened it to a second opinion from a
doctor. Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, my goodness. It's
a
just
very costly second opinion.
Yeah, it's just going to waste more money, and the result's going to be the same. And it's just distressing to see that and disappointing. Again, this is just another example of members of our county government refusing to admit that they were wrong, and refusing to take responsibility for the almost $250,000 they wasted in taxpayer money.
Now adding on top even more cost.
Yes.
And so the decision was because it was Vanetten's name?
It's pretty convoluted.
Yeah.
It's pretty convoluted.
You're right. We can't fill the time. I mean, it would take 3 hours easily.
Yeah.
But that to me doesn't seem...
Well, when I filed the Article 78, obviously I had to say that the county manager in his function, in his capacity, acted inappropriately, and the county legislative chair in their capacity acted inappropriately. That's the only way they were named.
But he's not a chair anymore either.
Correct.
That's so confusing.
Yeah.
I have the wave counter on the screen. We should have a calendar of how many days this has been going on.
I know.
How long has it been?
It started in June of 23.
That's wrong. So I started in March, so this has been the whole show.
Yeah.
Thank you. But there was another controversy. This is convoluted as well.
Right.
And my thought, coming from kind of a PR background, it was a controversy that didn't really need to be put out to air in front of public. I'm not even sure if people... I tried bringing it up on the show, and it was a little too difficult.
Well,
how much is going on.
And the same person, Mr. Vanetten, is chair of the Finance Committee.
Okay.
He sent me an email basically demanding that I defend the overtime usage and the overage on the road patrol to the entire group. And he sent it out to all legislators, and in it there were several accusations of why this person made this much, and basically, you're wrong, prove you're not wrong.
Okay,
was the tone
that's great.
of the email. And that's how all this came to be over the last 3 years, was a consistent barrage of that type of communication. And I just decided that I'm not going to be the punching bag anymore for the entertainment of a few legislators. So I prepared a presentation and I compared our overtime, the
Not-
roads overtime.
Not much of a time frame either, right?
No, it was on a Wednesday. Be ready for Monday or
okay.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
But I prepared it and I researched and I also included some of the monies that the legislature has wasted in excess of what
Yeah.
our overages were, and showed that every agency was over, every large agency, and the only other 24/7 was over. The only difference was is the budget from year to year attempted to keep up
Right.
or meet what the historical experience was. Mine was the same static for 5 years.
Which is not how budgets are supposed to
And
be.
it was when they started that, I was already over
Yeah.
budget by 100,000, and we had a 25% increase in wages during that time. Still no increase.
Right.
And then I got the number of hours actually worked in overtime from personnel, and it was constant.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm confused here. If the goal is to say, why are you over? I'm going to say, why haven't you budgeted responsibly?
Right.
And then it morphed into, well, we didn't want that. We wanted to know if you need more people. And do you need an extra deputy?
Oh, it turns out this was all nice.
Yes. Yes. It was
Amazing how
all
that
done
worked.
to help me.
That's interesting how that works out.
And so I said, well, one person's not going to make a bit of difference. We're 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Right.
If you're going to increase a post across the board, that's 6 people.
Yeah.
That's 600,000 to start.
Yeah.
You've got 400,000 in overtime. Is that efficient? So I suggested that we do a staffing analysis by an outside firm that's going to look at the size of the county, the number of complaints, and say you should have X number of deputies per shift.
Sure.
And let that guide us.
Yeah. It just seems like another kind of unforced error on the county's
Well,
part.
then,
you know?
yeah. And so, as you know, I didn't put out that report as a press release. I
No.
just posted it because there were people on that dial into that committee that weren't able to see it because I was shut off halfway through.
Oh, were you really?
Oh, yeah.
Technical glitch?
I was told that I was engaging in drama, and this was not the place for that. And I'm like, this is where it all began.
That's what. Well, the drama did all begin there,
Yeah.
but that's kind of that's where drama should happen.
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you should be having the conversation,
Well, and
not
that
behind
was-
closed doors.
Yeah. So I was,
That's a whole nother issue.
and then both people that attacked me and that apologized to me later,
Okay.
privately.
Oh, well, of course.
You know.
Yeah, I will say, and I know this has been kind of encouraging for me because you don't know how much people follow the news.
Right.
And so it's petition season.
Yeah.
Of course it is. It's snowing. Of course
Yeah.
it's petition season. And I've been taking around the petition, and I'm amazed at the first question because I know when you were on the program last time when you had to take your petitions out, I joked it must take up so much of your time because everybody
Yeah.
has so many questions. It took up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single, I shouldn't say single because I have a lot of signatures, but there's a couple people that maybe didn't know, but everybody else was asking about you and what's going on in the county because there's legislative races this year.
There are. Yeah, there's actually 2 in this area.
Yeah.
One for Corning, town of Corning, town of Hornby, and town of Caton, and that has 3 people running for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then Irwin also has at least 3.
Yeah. At least the number keeps adding every day.
Yeah.
But that's important that this. I think it's a good thing because how
It
many
is.
times are there local races where there's no primary?
Well, and I think that's how we got to the spot we are with the legislature is that nobody paid attention. For years, no one paid attention, and you were at the Republican committee meeting 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago when the former chair said, "We like it when no one pays attention."
Yeah.
Well,
That's very telling.
if you don't want what you're doing out in the public, if you're not transparent, there's a problem. And you're not transparent for a reason. And that's been a lot of what has caused this is the lack, and it was called out by the Supreme Court justice, is that lack of transparency and unwillingness to follow the open meeting law.
Right.
So I think that people are waking up because there's a lot of tax money that goes to the county.
Right.
And people are going, wait a minute. We thought these people were taking care of our needs, and they're not. We thought that they were representing us and serving us, and they're not.
Right.
So what are they doing? Well, they're serving their own needs, and some are, not all. And so people are starting to pay attention, and they're starting to ask questions, and they're getting involved.
They are.
And that's phenomenal.
It's great because like I said, you never know. You get kind of discouraged. You say, are they going to pay attention? And then when you explain the candidates, and that's the first question they ask.
Yeah.
they say, where do they stand on the sheriff?
Right.
I think that's really encouraging.
Well, and what is it? I guess people, according to Mr. Vanette and folks, are changing their votes because they're so scared of me. Because I'm such a terrifying individual.
That has not been the reaction. I'm getting signatures. That's why I was going to joke that when they asked me where they stand on the sheriff, no one's ever said, "I hope he's against the sheriff."
Yeah.
That has not been one of the reactions yet.
It's just I'm doing this job because A, people ask me to do it,
right,
and B, I think I have something to offer, and I think we've made really good changes at the sheriff's office, and we still have more to make, and. I'm 61 years old. I should have been retired by now. And I'm still doing this not because I want my name in the paper, not because I want to tell legislators how to do their job. I'm still doing this because I care about the people that work there, and I care about the job that we do, and I realize that I serve the public. And I want to make sure that all of our employees realize that we serve the public.
And you wanted to be on Frankly Speaking.
And I want to be. I feel
that's why you ran for re-election.
There would be a hole in my heart if I could not be on Frankly Speaking.
Baloney. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street in Corning. In that studio, Sheriff Jim Allard. We've got a lot of comments coming in, but I didn't have a chance to read it because you and I get talking off the air. That is my fault. So and we can move on from the county.
From the silliness.
I know. So a couple of quick things. First of all, I don't think we had a chance to talk about this. I talked about it with John Buckley, mayor of Hornell. Congratulations on Republican of the Year.
Oh, I appreciate that. It was very humbling.
Yeah.
It was.
He was telling me about the Lincoln Day dinner. I heard it went very well.
It did, and it was a really good crowd, too.
Yeah. He said one of their biggest, I think.
Yeah.
That's great. It goes to show you people are really not just jazzed up because of the Trump election and all that, but also
getting ready for next year.
Well, and getting ready for next year and the legislative races. I mean,
yes.
I don't want to get back into that, but there's a lot of reaction on that. So anyway, congratulations. I wanted to bring that up.
I appreciate that. It was very humbling to receive.
Yeah, they're doing such a good job in Hornell.
They are.
I mean, I say this on the program too often. I said it with him, but if 15 years ago, well, maybe 20 years ago, you would say that Hornell was a Republican powerhouse, you would have laughed at me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Sean Hogan had been
he
there.
Punched in the mouth.
Yeah, right. I mean, Sean Hogan had been in mayor for
ever.
Yeah, 50 plus. No, it wasn't that quite, but I think it was 35. All right, where do I got next? But I meant to kind of start the program with that. So why don't we do this? Because we are running late, and this will give me an opportunity to read those comments. When we come back, we'll read the comments and go through all that. How about that? Okay. So we're going to go through a quick. We went through a quick one there. Sorry about that. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and now I had a chance to get all our comments together. Sorry, I got flustered. Here we go. First one. Comment from a viewer. As a family member of 2 New York State corrections officers who lost their jobs, one must understand that the conditions were so horrible that they were willing to risk losing their livelihoods. And you said that on the show, and I quoted it frequently, that it was an act of desperation.
It was.
It really was. One of our family members had 5 years left to go before retirement. I was angered when I heard Governor Hochul make a statement on a national news outlet a couple of weeks ago saying New York State welcomes federal employees terminated from their positions, stating we respect and are willing to work with federal employees because we honor public servants. Clearly, she does not honor New York State public servants. Otherwise, she would have come to the table for a meaningful conversation with the corrections officers who were crying out to be heard.
Well stated. Yeah. Well stated. Yeah.
All right, comment from a different viewer. I'm on your side, Sheriff Allard. The Democrats that no doubt comprise the county's bureaucracy. No, not really, right? Should have had their heads examined and to quit squabbling about thousands of dollars when they would condone spending millions of dollars to ban cell phones in schools, for example. That's at the state level. Yeah, no, that's kind of a misconception.
Well, I think it's what do they call it, rhino?
Yeah. It's not, but it wasn't the Democrats. Okay.
No.
Comment from a different viewer. Also, if you were not making the public safe because you don't have the staff to protect the public without offering overtime, you could bet they would complain loudly. Keep up the good work, sir. That's nice.
Appreciate
they would complain
that.
loudly,
Yes,
but they complain loudly about anything you do.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, now this one I think is a little too much. I don't want this to go to your head.
Did my wife write in again?
Yeah, maybe. No. Jack writes, I'll bet the sheriff is a Gunsmoke fan. He has a lot of the common sense and integrity of the Matt Dillon character. That makes me a big fan of Sheriff Jim Allard.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. Who is it that Billy Spalding always equates you with?
Oh.
What is that movie?
Yeah, it's support your local sheriff.
That's what it was.
James Garner.
With James Garner, because he had an autographed poster of that in his office. I'm going, does he have James Garner? Like, I'm trying to think of, I think Walter Brennan's in that or something.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, cool. And then I see you had it signed. So anyway. Okay, a couple things, because we are almost out of time. I want to talk about, we were talking about Hornell, and this is, tell us about Ricalto's. We read his op-ed. That was a great op-ed that
very
he did
well
for
written.
the Hornell Sun.
Very incisive and very well written, I thought.
Yeah, and he had a big dinner for you.
He did. We were raising money for the Sheriff's Institute Summer Camp and Wellness Center.
Yeah.
So this is really taking off. We have it's gorgeous summer camp on the bluff up on Cuca Lake.
Yeah.
The Institute does. And kids from all over the state come to it for 6 weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
And it's just a phenomenal thing. A group of us got to talking about, it's so beautiful there, why can't we use it all year?
Right.
And something that's near and dear to my heart, as you know, is officer wellness and taking care of our people. And that viewer that wrote about the 2 family members.
Yeah.
So my thought process was a first responder wellness center, so that everyone's under that umbrella.
What a great
And
idea.
they're all experiencing the same trauma, and they're seeing things they shouldn't have to see, and so we began a campaign to raise private funds to build a center on that property and housing to support it, and we hired the Institute. The Institute hired a private fundraiser to do it, a person that works with colleges, hospitals, etc. And we're a third of the way through to our goal right now, which is in the millions.
Yeah.
And
But that started relatively recently to be that far in fundraising. That's great.
Yeah. Well, it's something that people connect with and people see the need for. And there's really nothing in the Northeast. If you want to go to a center like this, you'd have to go to Maryland or Kentucky or farther west or south. So this will be the first of its kind in the Northeast.
But do they have the view that we have?
Nobody's got the view.
No, that's crazy.
No.
Yeah.
And so Ricalto's did that. Part of that dinner was a fundraiser for that.
That's great.
So we didn't raise $1 million.
No.
But we did raise $450, which I was very excited about.
And raise awareness is probably the
Yes.
most important point, because what this is going to do, like you mentioned, with people dealing with the trauma, what your goals, what would a typical experience for someone? I know it'll differ depending probably on what happened.
Depending if it's as a result of a specific traumatic incident or combined stresses, but basically go to Cuca Lake for 3 days for free. Have classes in the morning on coping skills, wellness skills, how to be prepared to go back and unplug, and then all afternoon is enjoy the water and the 32 acres of woods.
That's great.
Above the camp, and help them unplug, reset, deal with the accumulated stress, and then return to their job healthier.
What a great idea.
And in a better mindset, because, and this ties it in with something that was recently in the news. Frustrated law enforcement officers make really bad decisions, both personally and professionally. And anything we can do to help that, to make that better, is life-saving. We have the most amount of suicides per profession in law enforcement. So anything we can do to alleviate that even a little bit is a huge gain.
And I think this is such a unique idea that I know people, because right now it's probably at a higher level when we talk about fundraising.
Yes.
Will there be an opportunity for people that are watching this program in the future to donate?
Absolutely. They're doing what they call the soft fundraising part now, where it's companies and foundations, and then it'll be out to the private donations after that.
That's wonderful. What is the time frame on it? Is there a goal of when?
We're hoping to. Well, we aren't hoping. We're going to break ground this summer at the end of the camping season.
Oh, great!
And we hope to have it open next year. We hope to have it completed in a year, and ready to begin programming.
So is this going to be people in all the Northeast that can use this, you're saying? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't see us saying no to anybody.
Right. Yeah. That's
And we have monthly meetings right now with FASNY, which is the Fire Association, Division of Homeland Security in New York State, Bureau of EMS, volunteer firefighters, DEC, the New York State Chiefs of Police, the Mahaney's, which is Mental Health Association in New York State, Parks and Rec. We're all on it, and we're trying to go. We all have these programs and this vocabulary. Let's do this and put it under an umbrella.
Yeah.
And all speak the same language and offer the same ability to heal to everybody that's in all of the first responder, the different disciplines.
Yeah.
And it's
great
just
idea.
gaining steam like bad.
I know, because I the first time you brought it up wasn't that long ago. So to hear that kind of fundraising number is fantastic. But
Yeah.
it doesn't come as a surprise. I can't imagine anybody says no to that. You know what I mean?
It's seen as so needed and so necessary.
And it's almost shocking that there hasn't been something like it already.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just happen to have the greatest piece of land.
We do. We got 1,000 feet of frontage on Cuca Lake.
The best hidden secret.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Sheriff Jim Allard has been our guest this morning. Thanks for giving us so much time as always. Anything else you want to say before we go?
Just thank you, and keep telling the news, the local news, because what you do is so important. And I tell this to Brian O'Neill up to WLEA.
That's a great job. Yep.
What you do is so important, because without you, there's no real local news.
No, it's getting more difficult, and that's why coming up, as we talked about earlier, with the local election season, is going to be really important.
Yes.
I had someone yesterday, I'm going to run late, but on the petition saying we don't know these candidates, we don't know who
Right.
they are. But that's not their fault.
No.
It's just there's not the outlet anymore. Well, thank you, Sheriff. We'll talk to you again soon, okay?
No worries.
All right, join us tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. We have Corning Mayor Bill Bolin. That's at 6 tomorrow with Frankly Speaking.